Hey everyone, before today's video I just wanted to remind you all to subscribe and hit that bell button for more content. That way when a new video is released you'll be the first to hear about it. Hello and welcome to another episode of Psychology Mythbusting. The Insanity Plea. In several high-profile cases throughout history, the Insanity Plea seems to have been the saving grace for many would-be jail-bound criminals. Just like that, it appears that all they have done is brushed away and these criminals are essentially given a get-out-of-jail-free card, all because some conniving lawyers found yet another loophole to work around, or work through. While lawyers make scapegoats for just about everything people find unjust in society, misconceptions about how often the insanity plea is successfully used, as well as criminals going free because of this plea, is a myth. To help explain why, I'll recount a case that many Americans still think of to this day when they hear the words insanity plea. The year is 1981, and U.S. President Ronald Reagan has just emerged from the Washington Hilton Hotel and is casually waving and greeting spectators as he makes his way to the presidential limousine. In a matter of seconds, the tone of the situation erupts from calm to chaotic. 6 shots ring out, one of them hitting a secret agent, another hitting a police officer, a third hitting the president's press secretary, and one of the 6 wounding the president himself. The bullet narrowly misses President Reagan's heart, and he lives to fully recover after nearly dying. The same cannot be said for his secretary, who suffers permanent brain damage to this day. The perpetrator, John Hinckley, is hardly what one might describe as a stable individual. Having fallen in love with the actress Jodie Foster from a distance, John Hinckley, a delusional 26-year-old Yale student, believed that he could impress Jodie Foster to fall in love with him by killing the president. Inspired by the movie Taxi Driver, and specifically Travis Bickle, a character played by Robert De Niro, he carried out his delusional fantasy and nearly killed the president. In 1982, following a heated trial involving psychiatric experts, the jury found Hinckley not guilty by reason of insanity. The verdict was in no way accepted by the public, and in one poll by ABC, 76% of Americans objected to the results of the case. This outrage is understandable, not only because this was committed so plainly in broad daylight, but also because it was caught on camera. There was no denying the fact that he had committed the crime in the eyes of America. However, the insanity defense does not concern whether the defendant actually committed the criminal act, but rather with the question of whether the defendant was psychologically responsible for the act. Other such high-profile cases have occurred since then, but Americans still believe this defense to be a cop-out and repugnant excuse to let a criminal quote-unquote off the hook. Because a few high-profile cases have featured the insanity plea, politicians and laypeople tend to believe that it is used more often than it actually is, and that those who plead the insanity case are set free 26% of the time. It is also widely believed that the insanity plea is used in 37% of felony cases, and that it is successfully used 44% of the time. The actual data is a sobering reminder of how untrue this actually is. Less than 1% of criminal trials raise the insanity plea, and it is successfully used about 25% of the time. I say this with air quotes, as the defendants end up spending their lives in a mental institution rather than a jail cell, as John Hinckley has done since 1982. Only 15% of insanity acquittees end up being released after between 32 and 33 months in a psychiatric hospital. Another aspect of the insanity defense is that it is strictly a legal term and not a psychological term. According to the legal system, there are generally 2 types of insanity defenses. The Mcnaughton Rule, which states that to be ruled insane, defendants must have either not known what they were doing at the time of the act or not known what they were doing was wrong. This rule focuses only on the question of cognition or thinking. Did the defendant understand the meaning of his or her criminal act? And secondly, the American Law Institute's guideline, which broadens this to include volition, or the capacity to control one's impulses. And again, the insanity defense is a legal, not a psychiatric or psychological term. Because Hinckley was acquitted under the ALI guidelines, or American Law Institute guidelines, many states responded by tightening these guidelines or returning to the Mcnaughton Rule. Several states, such as Montana, Idaho, Utah, and Kansas, have done away with the insanity verdict entirely. So the next time you hear friends or coworkers talk about someone acting quote-unquote insane, or about how the insanity verdict is a get out of jail free card, it may be a good idea to remind them of the statistics and how those acquitted more often than not spend their lives in a mental institution as opposed to a jail. Thanks for watching, and stick around for more popular psychology myth busting.